31, Vihisha Amda. Okay? It is this that has stood by our fathers and us, for not only one has risen against us to annihilate us, but in every generation they rise against us to annihilate us. But the Holy and Blessed He rescues us from their hand. Think about that for a little bit, and think about where we're at right now. In every generation, the enemy of last generation doesn't have to be the same enemy of our generation. The enemy of our generation right now, in addition to, of course, being the virus that's outside of us, that's creating tremendous limitations on who we are, but the enemy also, in many, many aspects, is the one inside of us. The one that's constantly battling that voice that says, where is this going? That's also rising up against us. And it's on us to go ahead and push that voice down and be optimistic and understand and recognize that we've managed through so much of history that we'll continue to manage again. For those, like I said, who've been hit, and for those who are in the hospitals, and we have to do an extra special job in praying for our medical community that put their lives at risk every single day. I know a lot of them that are getting up every day and going to work. People who are married, have wives, have children, and put themselves at risk to help others. We're in an unprecedented time. I am not one of those people. I am here trying to figure out how to continue to have the wheel turns here in the Schwartz family and as well as in our community at large. And it's a very, very different experience of what they're going through, or your postal people, or your cops, or your fire department, people that the essential workers that we need to think about. But for the 95% of the rest of us that are not subject to that, we first and foremost must think about them and pray for them. And then we have to ask ourselves, what are you doing? Now that you got your Wi-Fi all hooked up, now that you Netflix binged, what are we doing to stand up against this challenge of our generation? And I think the challenge of our generation, the challenge of this year is to be able to somehow, some way still be strong. That's the calling of the hour. Our children are looking at us. Our friends are looking at us. It's a unique time. It's the most bizarre time. Can we lift each other up? And I want to conclude with an idea, and we'll pick up the Haggadah, from where we're at and continue on in our next class. But I want to leave you with the following. Zman Cheruseinu, the time of freedom, the gift that we're giving this Passover and every Passover, this energy that gets reinfused into our own ability. The reason why it's so pivotal, why it's so special, is because it's not a gift that God gave us outside of ourselves. It wasn't that we were slaves and Hashem said, okay, now you get to be free, but rather the freedom that we have is who we are. It's not in addition to who we are. It's not like, okay, you're you and I'm going to give you a car and you get a car on top of who you are. You can ride the car and use it when you want. Freedom is not an experience, a gift outside of who we are. Freedom is who you are. It's what you are. The very definition of who you are, the very essence of who you are, is a soul. And a soul, by definition, is free. A soul cannot be locked in. A soul cannot be locked up. And I will share with you an idea of a Hasidic story. Of course, everything always leads to a Hasidic story. And this will help understand perhaps the moment that we're in, and especially this idea of Zman Cheruseinu, the time of freedom. Now, understand that this thing about that God makes us free on Passover is not something outside of us, but it's who we are, is of course something that we need to work on all the time. Because just because you're free, but if you're not accessing your freedom, then it doesn't help. So the first thing is to know that who you are is someone who is free. Why? Because the personality, the characteristic, the very, very essence of who you are is a soul, and the soul is by definition free. So the question is, how do you exercise that freedom within your body? Well, today you have limitations about that. You can't just walk outside, and you should be social distancing. But certainly the soul that is within your body, wherever you are in the home right now, we have the freedom. We're studying Torah. When we finish studying Torah, we can be kind and nice and help clean up around the house. And there's many, call a friend. Sadly, I have a friend who lives here in New York. His father is in London. His father is elderly and caught the virus and passed away a day ago. He couldn't fly to sit Shiva in London. He's in New York alone. People can't even visit him, Shiva. But we got to call him and ask him and lift him up to the best that we can. Remind him that he has friends out there. So everybody's going through something we still have the freedoms to exercise mitzvot on constant levels. And that's how you truly exercise. How do you know you're free? When you actually put that freedom into use. So nothing can really get in the way of that. That's something that we have to remember, that's ours and ours forever. So remembering this idea of freedom will allow us to anchor ourselves to something higher. And when we're in that constant state of consciousness, then it's not that we dismiss what's around us. That's not how freedom works. That's not how spirituality works. We're very well aware and we're very, very well attuned as to what's happening always around us. And we're washing our hands and we're wiping things down and we're social distancing and we're quarantining and we're trying to do our best not to get out there. And at the very, very same time, inside, we're not being navigated by the fears and the voices. And I would encourage all of you, and I say this because I love you all, and so it's free mental property. Don't watch too much news. Whether it's CNN, Fox, it's a soap opera. It doesn't help you. You can watch the news in terms of the facts and the data, what's happening, how many people have the virus, and how are the hospitals doing, and are we stemming the curve? Those things, yes. But don't make yourself meshuggah. You have time in your hand. Go read a story. Go listen to some music. Study more Torah. That's called being free. To anchor yourself with freedom is to do a mitzvah to actualize that. I shared on my Facebook page a 3-minute clip of Sharansky, who talks about, and I'll get to the story, don't worry, who talks about his 9 years in isolation. And it was very, very popular. A lot of people shared it. First of all, he was very, very calm. But I think he missed one point, and perhaps we can add to that. Not that I'm judging him at all. We can learn a lot from him, and we do. But in addition to taking care of your time, when we do a mitzvah, that's something practical that we can do to take our essential character and put it into usage, to fan it through our body. So the soul doesn't just stay this pure idea of holiness inside of us, but it actually manifests into our movements. We make a blessing when we eat. We wake up in the morning, we say, Moda Ani Lefanach, we thank Hashem for returning our soul back to us. We go to sleep at night and we say, Shema Yisrael, we say, thank you Hashem, again for being one, and we're part of your oneness. To constantly be moving your soul into any aspect and manifestations of your movements, your talk, your mind, your speech, constantly. This is a time that we all need to be headstrong. We can think and we can spiral out of control as to what's going on. That doesn't help anybody. Or we can be steadfast and stay strong and lift each other up. So here's the story and why I wanted to share with you this powerful point that freedom is not something that you were gifted outside of yourself. Freedom is you. You are the gift, and the gift is freedom. And as long as you always remember that, nothing can stop you. In the Holocaust, when Jews managed to go ahead and survive, it's because they held on to this point. They understood intrinsically that they were meant to be free. Now, obviously, the catastrophe that went on over there is beyond us. But the exception, how anyone was able to survive. And I've spoken to Holocaust survivors, and that's how their mindset was. That's who they recognize who they are. They had to be free. And that's what our mindset must be right now. So the story is there's a famous Hasidic chassid. His name was Mendel Futterfass. And it was actually a distant cousin. And Mendel Futterfass was, of course, put into the Siberian labor camps for assimilating Judaism and Torah. And somehow his spirit was always solid. He managed to keep it in the most difficult of times. He managed to keep his spirits very strong. And these were the toughest groups and the roughest groups that were out there. And yet somehow, none of these tough and rough guys were able to keep the level of Mendel's spirit. He managed to keep his spirit up. They couldn't break him. So they're sitting around the campfire, and they're going around and they're each sharing about, how they got there. And one guy says he used to go ahead and steal horses and he got busted and that's why he's there. And everyone was talking about how they had a team of bandits and they were, successful. And now they're nothing. Now they're prisoners. They have shackles around their sleeves. And they asked Mendel, listen, what did you do on the outside that you managed to keep your spirit so strong, even though you're shackled in this prison? What were you on the outside? He says, exactly what I am on the inside. I haven't changed. Everything that was about me outside, which was a God-fearing individual, which was someone that expressed myself by having a consciousness, by recognizing that I have a soul and it's attached to a creator, and we all have a purpose in life, and we all have a mission in life, And every day brings us a new opportunity, and every moment brings us an opportunity. And that's how I'm wired. I study Torah, I do mitzvahs, and I try to manifest it in every expression of who I am. So that's the totality of my personality. It's not my title. It's not how many, Instagram followers I have or how much money I have in the bank. Now more than ever, we're all equalized.